In this video, we're going to create a single destructible building from these four in the package. To begin with, we're going to create a new empty game object with Control-Shift-N and just name it to Destructible House. Select the four houses we're going to use using Shift or Control, hit Control-D to duplicate, then drag them onto the Destructible House game object. Once they're all parented, zero out their transforms to make sure that they're all in the same location. To make it so the house can be destroyed, we need two components, a damage receiver component and a health reservoir, which will hold how much health the building has. We want this building to change based on how much health it has, so we're going to create a new script and call it GameObjectHealthSwapper. Double-click the script you just created to open it in your text editor of choice. We'll start off by creating a list of the game objects that we want to keep track of and activate as the health has changed, and then have a list of the thresholds that we're going to have at which the game object will change. In the Poly War Pack, the component that keeps track of how much health an entity has is called a health reservoir, and so we'll just create a field to keep track of it so that we can access it later. We'll start off by initializing it using the getComponent method. And since this component will be necessary to function, we can add a requireComponent tag to the component. It's also worth noting, in order to access the health reservoir component, you'll need to make sure that you have the using polyperfect.war namespace included. And now for the actual logic of the script, we're going to create an index variable that will keep track of which game object we're going to have active at a given time. And in order to determine what value to put into the index, we're going to loop through all of the thresholds and compare those values to the current health of the game object. Next, we'll loop through each of the game objects to activate and make sure that we set their active state to whether or not their index matches the index that we found in looping through the thresholds. And with that, we should have our working script, and if we Alt-Tab back into Unity, we can begin setting it up. Now just drag in the objects from lowest health to greatest health, and just set the thresholds at which you want the buildings to be changed. And with that, we have a building that indeed is destroyed when we shoot it with the tank. However, it seems like the tank does a bit too much damage, so let's go ahead and increase the health on the building a little bit, as well as the thresholds. There's actually a few ways we could improve this script a little more, though. The first way is going to be to change it so that instead of the thresholds being checked and the game objects being activated and deactivated every frame, the check only happens when the health itself has changed. The Polyperfect War Pack has a lot of events that you can hook into, so we're just going to register with the health's change event and tell it to update the game object visibility then. So for now, we'll just copy and paste our existing code into the new method. And as you can see, everything still works as it did before. It is just a lot more efficient now. There's actually still one last large improvement that we can make to this script though, and that's to make it so that instead of functioning just on health, it functions on anything that has a number or floating point value attached to it. To accomplish this, we're going to remove the require health reservoir component and instead add a field that we can drag any floating point reservoir into. It will then register with that floating point reservoir's change event and use that to update the game object's visibility. And just to show an alternate way of getting the values from the change event, instead of querying the float reservoir directly, we can instead just use the change event arguments. Now, instead of the health reservoir being selected automatically, you'll have to drag and drop it into the attached field in order to get it to function as it did before. However, now we have the ability to use any reservoir, such as an energy reservoir, which, unlike the health reservoir, regenerates automatically over time. Just be sure to drag the new reservoir into the field, and instead of having a building that we destroy, we have one that builds itself over time without having to write any additional code.